Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking some truly fascinating research from the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University. We're looking at a huge issue: why one-size-fits-all approaches to child development, health, and education are, frankly, leaving way too many kids behind. We all know investing in early childhood is absolutely crucial, right? But the data is telling us that our current systems are missing a massive piece of the puzzle. So we're going to dive into the science of human variation to see exactly how we can fix that.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll quickly hit the average problem, the biology of variation, how environments shape us, the impact of inequities, rethinking childhood risk, and finally, building flexible futures. Let's get right into it.
So why do some children completely thrive, while others struggle or see absolutely zero benefit when placed in the exact same program? It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It challenges educators, pediatricians, and policymakers every single day. For decades, we've relied on an evidence-based mindset that basically asks, well, does this work on average? But here's the thing. Relying on the average means we're totally overlooking the huge range of children who fall way above or way below that middle line.
The source material puts it perfectly. Within this variation lies opportunity. If we can just unlock the science behind why children react so differently to these same environments, we literally hold the key to maximizing our societal impact. It's not about inventing an infinite number of unique individual programs. It's about anticipating variation.
Moving into our first section, the average problem, and why we need to move beyond asking, does it work on average?
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at two distinct types of variation. First up, between group differences. These are the macro-level community and structural factors we hear a lot about. Think demographics, access to resources, and systemic barriers that hit entire communities. But then there's within-group variation. Even within the exact same family under the same roof, individual outcomes can vary wildly. Why? Because of highly individualized biological variations, like genetics and stress reactivity. We absolutely have to account for both if we're going to truly support human development. That brings us right to Section 2, the biology of variation. We're talking genes, experiences, and epigenetics. Let's zoom in on the rapidly advancing science of epigenetics. Listen, you aren't just your DNA. Sure, everyone carries their own set of genetic instructions, but your genome is literally designed to react to the environment. Through epigenetics, your life experiences, everything from the food you eat to the stress you feel, starting even before birth, actually activate molecular markers that attach to your genes. These experiences are literally writing the instruction manual for how, when, and where your genes get turned on or off. It's wild.
Think of human development like a violin. The physical build of the instrument, the wood, the shape, the strings, that's your genes. But the sound that violin actually produces, that depends entirely on the musician playing it, the sheet music, and the acoustics of the room. Those are your experiences. The physical instrument is completely incomplete without the experiences that bring it to life in totally distinct ways. This beautifully illustrates how these interactions play out in the real world, especially when it comes to handling stress. Some kids have what scientists call low stress reactivity. They seem super resilient, managing to get by across a bunch of different, even difficult environments. But other kids, they have high stress reactivity. Historically, we've just labeled these children as vulnerable, but actually, scratch that. It's not accurate. They are highly sensitive. This means that while they might struggle more in highly adverse environments, their biology actually allows them to outperform their less reactive peers when they're placed in highly supportive, enriching settings. They aren't broken. Their bodies are just finely tuned to their surroundings.
To see how this plays out medically, let's hit Section 3, how environments shape us, looking at a childhood asthma case study. When you look at the data, developing asthma isn't just a stroke of bad genetic luck. It is a complex, ongoing collision of protective and harmful environmental exposures, all interacting with a child's unique underlying biology.
A really amazing finding here is the role of timing and the microbiome. For example, early exposure to good bacteria, like having a dog in the house during a baby's first 2 years, actually lowers their risk of developing asthma later by diversifying their gut microbiome. But here's the catch. Exposure to those exact same bacterial products later in life might actually increase the risk of asthma symptoms, depending on the kid's genetics. Timing is absolutely everything here. The developing body is uniquely sensitive during pregnancy and those critical first few years. Now let's zoom back out for Section 4, the impact of inequities and how social context literally gets under the skin.
The research impartially shows that socially constructed demographics are massive drivers of health outcomes. Take the intersection of air pollution, asthma, and structural racism. It's deeply documented in the data. Historically marginalized groups who have been impacted by practices like redlining remain way more likely to live right next to major pollution sources like highways or factories. They also typically have unequal access to the protective benefits of green spaces. Add to that the persistent psychological and physical disruptions of systemic racism, which acts as a major biological stressor. So what we're seeing is that socially constructed policies are literally getting under the skin, translating into measurable biological hardships.
Because this whole picture is so incredibly complex, we need to rethink things. That brings us to Section 5, Rethinking Childhood Risk and the Limits of the ACE score. The ACE score, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, is used constantly in pediatrics to tally up how many adversities a child has faced in order to predict their future health. But relying solely on a simple checklist leaves out a massive amount of individual and systemic context.
Here's the crucial point. While ACE scores are pretty great at predicting risk across large populations on average, they are actually terrible at predicting outcomes for individuals. The researchers emphasize that for one specific child, an ACE score is essentially no better than a coin flip. Crazy, right? Why? Because the basic checklist ignores broader community context, like poverty, food insecurity, or racism. It ignores the age the child was when the trauma happened. And crucially, it ignores protective factors, like a fiercely supportive caregiver that might have completely buffered that child's stress response. Relying on the score alone risks falsely labeling kids as high risk without seeing the whole picture. Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Building Flexible Futures, and how we actually plan for all this variation.
The big takeaway here is that we need a 3-layered approach. Number 1, broad-based programs. Every child has universal needs, so universal access to healthcare and education is the non-negotiable baseline. Number 2, strategic targeting. We have to direct resources to address the specific between-group differences and structural inequities we just talked about. And number 3, flexible implementation. This is the big missing piece. We have to empower our local practitioners, the teachers, nurses, and social workers on the ground, with the training and the flexibility to adapt these evidence-based programs to fit the unique biological and social profiles of the actual kids sitting right in front of them. We need to evaluate programs based on their ability to flex, not just their average success rate.
I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. We've seen today that from the microscopic epigenetic markers on our DNA all the way to the air we breathe in our neighborhoods, human variation is the absolute norm. It's not the exception. The price of continuing business as usual, designing for an average child who literally does not exist, is just too high. The science is completely clear. The real question is, are we finally ready to build systems that expect differences rather than ignore them? Think about that next time you look at the programs in your own community. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking those big questions.